Unmute this. There we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome into A Glitch in the Matrix. I'm your host, Jessica Jones, the Cryptid Huntress. Man, do I have a wild and crazy show for us today. We're going to be talking about feral humans, feral people. Potentially getting confused as wild men or being wild men of the forest and wild women. Can't leave them out. Yeah, this is going to be, like I said, a wild show today. And I have a really awesome co-host with me here today. My guest, I have John Vandeventer here with us once again. So we have a lot to talk about. Thank you guys so much for being here. I tell you what, I got so many glitches. There's always some kind of technical difficulty, but we always power through this. And fingers crossed, we make it through this episode today without another glitch. Okay, y'all. All right. Well, if you guys would like to follow along with all of my shows, everything that I'm doing, I have a Patreon Patreon. I have a website. Okay, I have a Patreon too. My website is thecryptidhuntress.com. You guys can see that down there on the clicker, the ticker, whatever you want to call it. Okay. And also I do have that Patreon if you'd like to support what I'm doing. And that's the Cryptid Huntress over there on Patreon. Also, I have a shop that's War Woman Goods, and I sell a variety of vintage Native American turquoise jewelry and more. So yeah, you guys go check that out. Thank you for all your support. I really appreciate it. Also, I do tarot card readings and stuff too. You guys can purchase those on my website. I'm catching up on the last of those today that I've had this past week, and I'll have those out by today. If you haven't gotten yours yet, it's coming today. Okay. All right, everybody. Well, I think that takes care of most of the business for today. So let's get into our topic today. We are going to be exploring feral people of the Appalachian Mountains and worldwide, actually. Okay. And we're going to focus on the Appalachian Mountains. That's where I do a lot of my Bigfoot research. But we've got John Vandeventer here with historical and recent reports of wild men and women in the region. Could these reports be describing Type 4 Sasquatch or feral humans? There are reports of hikers going missing in the Smoky Mountains. Could they be being taken by feral humans? We're going to explore that today. John Vandeventer is the author of the Relics book series. He's originally from Plano, Texas. He's a 16-year veteran of the United States Air Force. Okay, his books are all about UFOs and Bigfoot. He lives near Honobia. I can never get that right. It's Honobia, Oklahoma. He writes about it in his book. So I have with me here today my friend John Vandeventer.
Good afternoon.
Hey, John. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me again.
Of course. So I figured you might know a little something about feral humans. I don't know. I don't know why I felt inclined to ask you to join me for this particular show. I just feel like you and I would have a really fun conversation about feral humans today, John.
Well, it's funny. When you brought up the subject, I started thinking, well, when I moved out here back in 2018, I figured out there's some people that live. There's a lady lives down the road one direction. She doesn't have running water or electricity. And there's some guys that live the other direction and they don't either. And I'm thinking, coming from the city to out here, that seemed kind of feral to me when I first got out here. Now I realize there's a lot of people out in these hills that are living that way. So, but as far as just straight up feral, yeah, that's an interesting topic.
Oh yeah, super interesting topic. And a few years ago I watched this movie. It's called The hills have eyes. Okay, the hills have eyes. That might be my first introduction into like real feral humans and kind of how they're described. It's a little scary, I got to say, especially coming from a Bigfoot field researcher who spends a lot of time out in the national forest. Okay, and in all the woods and all over the United States, mostly in the southeast. But my stomping grounds are the Appalachian Mountains, and not only are we getting reports of velociraptors, we're getting reports of, oh, and I've experienced Bigfoots, dogmen, pterosaurs, and feral humans now. Okay, so feral humans, and I think those feral humans go way back. I mean, and in this day and time, John, I got to say, being living off grid sounds more exciting every day for me. Like I wouldn't mind living off grid, but there's a difference between living off grid and being feral. Okay, living off grid is like with no electricity, and still having some kind of, you know, kind of having some civility. You know what I mean? An
Well, I
organization.
know some people that live off grid as well on the other side of the mountain here, and actually there's two couples, and but they have solar panels on their house and things like that, and seem to be really happy with it. I don't know
Mhm.
if I want to go the route of no power whatsoever and no running water like the people I mentioned earlier. But and you talk about feral people, and you know, to me, that's a lifestyle that can be forced upon people. You know, people lose their jobs, people get shunned by their family or friends for whatever reason. We've had them here. We've had people that wanted by the police have warrants, and they'll go out in these hills and try to survive for 2 or 3 months. You know, and eventually they'll get caught sneaking down, breaking into somebody's house or something like that. But you know, for maybe every 10 of those, there might be one that makes it ghost feral. Um, but then, you know, in the Appalachians, as I was doing a little research on it this morning, because this isn't one of my strong suits, but you know, they were referring to clans of people that are feral. So that's a whole different ball too. I mean, to
Oh
me, that
yeah,
could be a real problem if
yeah.
if
We.
they're aggressive towards other humans. Be a problem.
Oh
If they're
yeah.
just out there wanting to be left alone, that's something entirely different.
Oh yeah. Okay, so what my team and I we have to really watch out for when I say that like I'm not as scared of Bigfoots as I am of humans, I am referring to exactly what you're talking about. Okay, and I always go out in the woods very well prepared to protect myself if needed, if you know what I mean. And
Right.
but we as a team have encountered people hiding out in the woods. I mean, there's all sorts of people, and they people have every right to be out in those national forests wherever they're at if they want to be. But there are serial killers out there. We had some cases here in Georgia of a man that had, you know, unalived a couple of people and was found up in one of the forests where we do some of our bigfooting. So we really have to be really careful about that. Also, not too long ago, I think it was about a year ago, there was a couple driving through a forest road out in Alabama at the Talladega National Forest, and they were flagged down by a couple of women. They weren't feral by any means, but they were off-grid livers apparently, and they are saying that they were having car troubles. They pulled a couple over, ended up holding them at gunpoint, and one of the people did pass away. There was a shootout. Okay, and the when the police got there and the search dogs got out in the woods, they found an entire community of off-grid livers out there. Um, that were living off the land in a national forest. Okay, so it's just first of all, it's kind of a harsh reality because of the economy and everything. There's going to be a lot of people out in those forests that wouldn't normally be out there probably living. So yeah, but like I said, there's a difference between feral and off grid, right?
Right. There is. And then feral too. I mean, we're getting where we have feral individuals in big cities, you know, the homeless. Uh, you look at like Jeffrey Dahmer. I mean, yes, he lived in an apartment and he lived in a city, but he was killing and eating people. I mean, that's
Hmm.
feral. He just made, you know, it. I don't know. It's really not a state of geography, I think, as much as it's a state of mind or a state of insanity. You know, that you're out eating people and
Yeah.
killing them. But you take Jeffrey Dahmer and put him in the woods, and he's exactly what you're talking about, basically.
Oh, oh, that's a good point. Okay, because I was doing my research on this. Okay, I was doing a lot of research, and I was finding that the feral people, a lot of people who were living feral in the woods, like these, like you said, clans of feral humans, particularly the Smoky Mountains. Let's just say Smoky Mountains and the Appalachian Mountains. And Smoky Mountains are kind of like Tennessee area. Um, they're cannibals. Some of them have been said to be cannibals, and this dates back, I mean, all over the world. Feral humans, a lot of times, they are cannibalistic. And so, yeah, that's a great analogy right there of Jeffrey Dahmer being out in the middle of the woods. Right before the show, my friend Barry Littleton sent me a link to a video about a couple who had been out in the woods somewhere here in the U.S. They didn't give their location away, but they said that they were attacked by feral men, and some Bigfoots actually saved their lives. Now, the validity of that, I don't know. I didn't do my research on it. I don't know if it was a true story or made up, but the story went. They said that a couple of Bigfoots, or they did. I don't think they said Bigfoots. They said giants. They called them giants. Um, Kind of fended those feral men off of them. Like they had spears and everything. They were like aborigines or something. Like they looked very primitive. They had primitive tools, but they were trying to unalive those people. And
Now, are you
the
saying
giants,
the
fear of
feral
them.
people had the primitive tools, or the
Yes,
giants that saved them, saved the couple?
the feral people had
Feral
spears.
people.
Yeah, they were out for blood actually. And they were afraid they were going. And the lady said in the interview, she said that she saw that one of the guys had what she thought were human teeth on a necklace.
Really?
Yeah,
Ugh.
yeah. So yeah,
Well, you were talking
this
about
has a
the
lot
hills
of
have
layers.
eyes, and again, kind of in
Mhm.
relation to Jeffrey Dahmer, probably the most feral human I can think of in as a movie character, a book character, is Hannibal Lecter. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, he was in jail, or he was a doctor and he got around society, but that dude was feral.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, what comes to my mind when I hear about feral humans, I think of all these children. Okay, there's been a lot of children over the years. I mean, we're talking about hundreds, if not thousands of years. Kids have been left alone in the woods, whether that was they were lost. And John, you and I did a show about children who had been lost in the
Yes, we
woods,
did. Yes,
and they were taken care of by bears, right?
right.
By bears. So they were taken care of by an animal. So now I did remote view that, and those cases appeared to be Sasquatch. Okay. They did appear to be taken care of by Sasquatch, but they were calling them bears for lack of knowledge, not knowing what they were. But
Well, um, it's funny you say, about Smoky Mountains or the Appalachian Mountains. And Smokies are part of the Appalachian Mountains, are they not?
yes.
Yeah. Well, when I first started researching for my very first book, I was listening to Coast Radio, and they had David Paulides on. And this was
Mhm.
before I knew he had been a Bigfoot researcher. And I was just listening to the show, and he was plugging his newest book, Missing 411. This is back when it was new. And I'll never forget one of the cases they went over in that on that radio show was the disappearance of Dennis Martin, this 9-year-old boy. And man, that just gave me the creeps, and that made me think. That just kind of put another spin on the Bigfoot story for me. I was thinking, well, I wonder if he got snatched by a Bigfoot, or what happened. But that was an eerie case, and that really kind of fueled my fire more to get the book done. Yeah, there you go. And I don't know, it just added a level of creepiness to the Bigfoot research. And so when I wrote the first novel, Relics, I had it wasn't a kid, but I had a grown man disappear in the same fashion. And it was just a creepy story. It gave me the creeps. I never thought about people just disappearing in the woods like that.
Okay. I am so glad you brought that case up because I've done a little research on this. And when you look up feral humans online, and the Appalachian Mountains too, this story pops up. There's no getting around it. Okay. The feral humans, and this is a little boy. This case has never been solved, according to officials. Okay. Now the locals have a different take on it. And I have also researched some of what the locals say about what happened to this little boy. Boy, their stories are different. Okay, but there's several things that could have happened to this child. And so let's just get into it. Let's talk about this, because I think this is an important story. And we'll also get into in the future, after we cover this case, we'll get into some of the other feral people, feral children throughout history, feral humans, and all these wild men. We got like the Tennessee wild man, the Kentucky wild man, the Ocheesee Pond wild man. Okay, there's wild men and wild women all over the United States. There were reports of them for centuries. Okay. So Dennis Martin is a 6-year-old. He was a 6-year-old little boy out of Knoxville, Tennessee. He was visiting the Great Smoky Mountains National Park with his grandfather, his father, and his older brother on Father's Day weekend back in 1969. Okay, and this is this picture right here. The family hiked from Cades Cove to Russell Field and camped overnight. The next day, they hiked to Spence Field near the Appalachian Trail, where they planned to spend the night. The little boy disappeared on June the 14th. While planning on surprising the adults. This was around 4:30 in the afternoon. He was planning on surprising the adults with his brother and other children from a separate family that the Martins were camping with. He was last seen by his father going behind a bush to hide, intending on surprising the adults with the other kids. After his dad didn't see him for about 5 minutes, when all the other kids had come back to the camp, the father became concerned. He started searching for him. He ran down the trail for about 2 miles. He decided the kid couldn't have gotten any farther. So after several hours, they got the park rangers to come and help look for the little boy. The search efforts included the National Guard, the Green Berets, but they found no trace. And of course, the heavy rains started during the first day of the search. There was a heavy fog and a mist the second day, which, by the way, John, correlates with a lot of these missing 411 cases from David Paulides' book. There's usually some kind of storm, some rain that hinders the search efforts that day or the next day. And in this case, it was both days. But footprints were found in the area, but were dismissed because there were Boy Scouts that were out there helping to locate this little boy. So they figured it was some of the little boys that were out there helping to look for him. Eventually, child-sized footprints led to a stream where they disappeared. The track indicated that one foot was barefoot, while the other, like a man-sized print, and the other was a child's shoe print that matched his little foot. Okay. Okay, so the money was offered for to help find this little boy. He was never found. Okay, never found. I think at some point there was a person years later that was searching for ginseng and said that he found some child's remains, but he didn't report it because he didn't want to go to jail for harvesting ginseng out of a national forest. Okay, that's illegal. Okay, I guess it's illegal. I don't know. I'm sure somebody will correct me in the chat if it's not illegal. You're not supposed to. So people were saying, well, he probably became lost and he died from exposure. He might have been attacked by a bear or a feral pig, or he was abducted by a person. Right? That was pretty much what happened. What the conclusion was. Okay. Well, all right. So if you do your research, you'll see that the locals have a different story to what happened to this little boy. Let's see where I got my notes here.
I don't know if you got this in your notes, but do you remember the part where there was this family, the Key family, had come in and they were wanting to go someplace? They asked some rangers where they could go to see some bears, and it just happened to be rangers that were involved. This was the first day of the boy's disappearance. And they told him, well, yeah, go to this spot. I forget what the name of the spot was, but the family gets there and it's a husband, wife, and son. And they get out of their car and the son says, hey, look, there's a bear up on that hill. And the father looked up there and he said, if you were going to cover this, let me know. but he said it didn't look like a bear. It looked like a man or man-like thing, and it had something thrown over his shoulders, and they had heard a blood-curdling scream a few minutes before, and they're thinking that may have been whoever or whatever abducted Dennis and was carrying him off. And when they went to try to report it to the FBI didn't want to take the information.
Okay, well that's super interesting. Okay, because the locals in the area knew that there were feral humans living on that property and on that land. And there is a YouTube video where this local was talking. I watched this. I sent you a link to that. So this was really interesting because he said that there's a whole different side to this, and he said that around the 1940s, before the park was ever there, before they designated that as a national forest or a national park, this guy's uncles had been approached by federal government employees, and they paid his uncles to hunt the feral men and the feral people that lived on that land. They lived on the outskirts of where that park was going to be, or where the park was. He said that once a year they come in, and he didn't know the exact price that they would pay them, but they would pay them to go eradicate them. Okay, if y'all know what everybody knows what that means. So they would eradicate them. He said, and these were like wild men and wild women and wild children too, unfortunately. But he said they ranged from there was a range from like them being unable to speak, and they were like animalistic, to being covered in hair. And some were able to speak, but it was a different language. And some of them just did clicks with their mouths, like some of the African tribes that you see today, or these Aboriginal tribes in Australia or wherever. They had like their own language of making noises. It wasn't actually like words like we have. Okay. He said that a lot of them were inbred. And some of them potentially could have been like some of the Cherokee Indians that had moved through there during the Trail of Tears, that had gone off the trail and escaped, and went to go live off the land. But yeah, these men were paid once, sometimes twice a year. He said were paid to what do you call it? Thin out the herd. Unfortunately,
Well,
what they called
something
it.
interesting along those lines is, you'll hear of National Guard troops being sent out for a search and rescue thing like this, but there was actually Green Berets. There was a Green Beret unit that was also out looking for Dennis, or they said they were out looking for Dennis, but they were operating on different frequencies from the search and rescue teams. So maybe that's why
Oh,
they were out there, to eradicate the same thing you're talking about.
yes. Well, this makes me think too. Okay, this is a little side note, y'all. Okay, so my team has been out in the field when we're doing our Bigfoot field research, and have watched as men in full like SWAT team gear, like military guys, come out of the woods, and they have their their ARs or whatever kind of guns they're carrying, and like bulletproof vests and all that stuff on, and their helmets. And the guys are like, well, what are y'all doing out here? And they say to my people, we're doing the same thing you're doing. Okay. But I don't know. What if they're actually out there? What if they're still doing this, John? What if they're, because we were like, well, maybe they're hunting down the Sasquatch or the dogmen out there. It could be feral humans,
Well, it could be.
unfortunately.
It could
Yeah.
be. I mean, because the human being is very adaptable. Yes, the majority of us, if you threw us in that environment, we'd probably die or succumb to something. But there's those individuals that can make it. I mean, it's in us instinctively. We had to come from the wilderness before we created civilizations and societies. Where did we live? We lived in the wilderness.
That's right. We lived off the land. All right. And yeah, it's just wow, it's really interesting though. Oh my gosh. Thank you, the girl with the gong. Thank you for that super sticker. That is so sweet of you. I appreciate that. You guys, thank y'all for your support. And Amy too. I see yours. Thank you, Amy, for that super sticker as well. You guys are the best. Okay.
Jessica, there's one other theory, the weather thing that I've thought a lot on that over the years. But you know how they say they'll have these disappearances, and then like a weather phenomenon will come up, a bad rainstorm
Yes.
or weeks of rain, and this is going back toward a natural predator. But I don't know if you're a fisherman but I do know a lot of bass fishermen. They will love to go out and fish just before a storm comes,
Oh
before
yeah.
there's a front moving through. And I wonder if maybe predatory animals, they feel the same change in pressure that fish do. So they want to grab as much food as they can. They get a little careless they get a little less choosy over what they're going to
Oh
take.
yeah.
And maybe they'll take a child or something because they know they're going to have to be holed up in their den for days on end. I don't know. That's just a theory that could happen. And amazingly, too, the thing with the berry bushes, the huckleberries and things like
Yeah.
that, so many people disappear while they're berry picking.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And Fred Roll from Alaska talks about that pretty often on his channel. Shout out to Fred. What's up, Fred? Y'all go subscribe to Subarctic Alaska Sasquatch, please. He's got some of the best firsthand. Actually, for him, it'd be like secondhand. Most of the stories from people telling him firsthand, okay, about encountering Sasquatch while they're berry picking. But that is one of the things that David Politis, it's like over and over again with these accounts of people going missing. They're picking berries. Okay. Or they're children that get away from the crowd. Like when you're hiking, they run ahead or they lag behind or they go off trail. So just please be aware. Part of the reason that I do these shows is to put the information out there so that people will be aware when they're at these national parks, to be aware of your surroundings at all time. Always keep your head on a swivel. Always know where your kids are. Do not let those children ever get out of your sight. Okay. Or just anybody. Okay. I'm going to go back to the Dennis Martin story. Okay. Because this is all connected. Okay. This all goes together. Because the gentleman that I was watching on the show, the local there, he said that everybody in the community knew that these feral people lived out in the woods and they had always been there. They were super wild. They lived off the land. He said that when the little boy went missing, okay, all the community knew they were there because occasionally their pets would go missing, a dog, a chicken, a pig. There were just little farm animals and domesticated pets that would go missing. And so when the little boy went missing, they knew where he went. The whole community assumed that it was the Wildman that got him, one of these feral people out there. And that's when the Green Berets were called in. And they didn't come to look for the little boy. They came to exterminate all the feral people that were out there, is what the locals said. They weren't there to help with the search. They were there to eradicate the people that were out in the woods because they had taken it too far, is what this man said. Okay. And so he said that when one of the officials, when they had gone out there and they had eradicated these people that were out in the woods, and gosh, I hate saying this because it sounds terrible, but there was the bodies were lined up out in the woods, and this is according to this local. Okay, he said that I believe it was the police chief. He actually ended up taking his own life eventually, and it was because of what they say. It's because of what he saw. And he said that he saw women and children and men and a lot that were laid out, that the Green Berets had gone in there and eradicated, and they looked very much deformed. Some of them looked like Bigfoots. They were wild men, wild women. They were covered in hair. And he said it was just too much for him. And so now could it have been too much for him, or could he have known too much? You know what I mean? Looking back at it, because that seems to be the norm these days, John.
Yeah. Well, a funny thing about back in the 1800s, 19th century, they had a lot of wild men reports. And it makes you wonder if they were seeing actual wild men or if they were seeing one of the types of Sasquatch. But the people in those days, when they report these hairy wild men, they would say things like, "Oh, the poor wretch had been shunned from society and lived out in the wilderness so long his body became covered in hair like a wild animal. They assumed if you went and lived away from society, you naturally grew all this body hair and grew a pelt all of a
Yeah.
sudden. So it's funny. You wonder, okay, are they seeing humans or are they seeing something else? Because that might happen over generations if
Get
people
super
decided
hairy.
just to
Well, if I
stay in
don't
the woods.
shave,
Yeah, but
I don't know.
it's
I
not
shave
gonna
my legs.
it's
I
not
might
gonna
get
happen in your
hairy.
lifetime. I mean, you're not gonna go in
Yeah.
looking like Jessica, come out looking like Winnie the Pooh
I
after
mean,
2 years.
growing a beard, I don't know. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
weird. That's super weird. Right. If I don't already have like long, I mean, my hair end up being just knotted up and greasy is the only difference about me. And I barely have leg hair to begin with. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, my armpits would look kind of gross, but I wouldn't just sprout hair all over my body just because I've been out there
right. No,
for a
nobody
lifetime.
would.
That's a good point.
But for some
Yeah.
reason, society and those they thought that's what would happen, and I don't know if that
Okay.
was something they were getting from their churches or just general old wives' tales. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good
But
point.
they've been around
Area
forever. The
51.
wild man goes back as far back as civilization.
Oh, we're going to
It's
get
been a
into
thing.
that. We're absolutely going to get into that. Yes. Area 51. Thank you for that super chat. Thank you so much. You're awesome. The one and only. And Lanita, thank you so much for that super sticker too. You're so sweet. And Cosmic Neighbor, I see you in there too. Thank you for that super chat too. I appreciate y'all so much. Thank y'all for so much for all the support. I really appreciate that. Okay. So I believe it was a police chief. It was one of the officials that was overseeing this case of the little boy, the Dennis Martin case, did take his own life. Okay. And the case went unsolved. Okay. In the public, it was unsolved. However, the locals all knew that this had, it was actually one of the wild men or the feral humans that had taken him, and they had eradicated all of them or as many as they could find. Now, did they kill them all? We don't know. But the locals don't go on those trails at night, and they warn people, do not go out in those Smoky Mountains by yourself ever. And I always say that, John, don't ever go out in these woods. Don't ever go on those trails by yourself. There's just too much out there. And from what I understand, these feral humans hang out in the trees. Now, what else hangs out in the trees? If you guys watch my show, you'll know that Bigfoots hang out in the trees. Okay. And dogmen hang out in the trees as well. Now we got feral humans hanging out in trees, John. I'm not sure how I feel about this. Okay.
Well,
I'm not sure how I feel about that.
you guys are looking in the trees anyway, so you're better
We
off than
are.
most.
We are. And you got to think about too, feral, I think feral humans could be mistaken for dogmen and Sasquatch because they are, if they're, wearing the pelts of animals, it's almost like a skinwalker, dare I say, okay,
Yeah,
where the people will put the skin of the animal on top of their body and their head, and they become that animal, like they take on those characteristics. Who's to say all these feral people aren't doing the exact same thing, you know? So they could be mistaken as a skinwalker, or they could be skinwalkers. I don't know. Okay. It's all, but y'all see, I just want the audience to see like this could be also connected in so many ways with the cryptids that we're out there studying and encountering. But yeah, Cosmic Neighbors, thank you for that. I appreciate that. But yeah, John, okay, and you did say the Wildmen too, right? The Wildmen, we have the Tennessee Wildman, we got the Kentucky Wildman. We have the Ocheesee Pond Wildman down in Florida. Okay, there are Wildman sightings all over, and these reports go back. I know in the 1800s there were newspaper articles across the United States of Wildmen. Okay, now could they have been feral humans? Yeah, but they were covered in hair. Their whole bodies were covered in hair, right, John?
and we've got people that are antisocial, and I think there's people out there they're not quite what you would call a wild man, and they're borderline feral. They still operate a little bit in the civilized world at a very minimal amount. But there's people out there you just don't want to run into, in your woods, in our woods. It could be people cooking meth. They're going to be out of their minds, and
Yeah.
they're going to go and become less and less social, have less to do. other than selling whatever they're making. But they're people are different. I mean, you we as a as a society or race or whatever, as just a human race, we cover a wide spectrum from super sophisticated down to base level instinct, and there's people that operate on every level, and there are people that are stuck on every level. So yeah, it's pretty interesting thing, and I could see it happening. I was surprised how much there was on it, but I was also surprised on how quickly people were against the idea. They would, they would shut that subject down before they would shut down the subject to say Sasquatch. They're quicker to say, no, these feral humans don't exist, but they believe
Yeah.
Sasquatch does. And I don't know, just looking out of the two, to me, I'd be more worried about the human than I would the Sasquatch if, I was going to be out in the woods for any length of time.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So Susan, this is okay. So that story that Barry had sent me the link to the story right before the show today, and it was about the couple who had been out in the woods, and they said that they were surrounded and attacked by a group of feral men, and that had spears and stuff, and one of them threw a spear and it hit the leg of her husband or boyfriend, her companion. Okay. And they were being attacked, and a group of giants, which I believe they were probably Sasquatch, but she kept calling them giants. They were covered in hair. She said that they defended them against those feral humans. So, and they ultimately, long story short, is that they were taken into a cave. The man's wounds were treated by the giants, and they were kind of having like telepathic communication with these giants. And the next morning, when the coast was clear that next night, I guess it was under nightfall, the giants had actually gone out there and unalived all those feral humans that came out there to hunt down those two people they were hungry, I guess. I think they were planning on eating them, is what she insinuated. And so the Bigfoots or the giants, they were actually, they were defending against the feral humans. They did not like the feral humans at all. So yeah, so that was the only account though that I could find, really, of the feral humans versus the Sasquatch. Okay, so I don't know for sure, but that was, and like I said, I don't even know if that story is 100% true, but I think it is. I mean, they presented it as though it was a true story. Okay, so yeah, who knows, John? Gosh, we live in such a wild world, crazy world here. But okay, there's also another story of a couple who was at a waterfall in around the Smoky Mountains. This was in the Smoky Mountains. They claimed that they saw a man covered in hair near a waterfall out there at the Smoky Mountains. They said that his eyes were sunken into his head, like he had like bad cataracts or something, and his face was deformed, and his arms were longer than normal. Okay, so sounds like a Sasquatch to me, personally. But it also sounds like a character off Them Hills Have Eyes. Okay, like that movie, The Hills Have Eyes. I mean, because there's a fine line at this point. There's kind of a fine line between a wild man and a feral human when it comes down to all this, John. So I don't know. What do you think? What do you think, John?
Well, when they're talking about the length of the arms and things like that, could have been a Sasquatch. If it was more man-sized, could have been a juvenile. I think, there may even be a rise in the cases of people going feral. Society is going through a lot of changes. People, economy's gone bad since COVID. People are losing their jobs. People are living in cars. There's always a step down, and sooner or later, when you're out of cars and you're kicked out of your house and you can't even make your car payment, where are you going to go? You're in a city.
That's right.
You get preyed upon by other homeless, so you might see a lot more of these wild men or wild people in general.
That's right. That's right. Now we have the Tennessee Wildman. This is from 1871, John. I said that there were newspaper articles. This was in the Jackson, Tennessee Whig. Says, well, let's see, the Hagerstown, the Mail. Okay, this is the newspaper this was in. They talk about a strange and frightful being that has been observed for several weeks. He's said to be 7 feet tall, possessed a great muscular power. His eyes are unusually large and fiery red. His hair hangs in a tangled and matted mass of jet below his waist, and his beard reaches below his middle. His entire body is covered in hair, and the whole aspect is most frightful. It gives out horrid screams. Well, actually, I think the women are the ones screaming because he's scaring everybody. But it says that he sometimes, with great caution, approaches houses, and should he see a man, he runs away with astonishing swiftness, leaping the tallest fences with the ease of a deer, defying alike the pursuit of men and dogs. So that means dogs can't keep up with him, men can't keep up with him. He has frightened several women by attempting to carry them off. My goodness, as well as by his horrid aspect, and the whole country around Sabi is consternation. Oh my gosh, those are words we don't use much anymore. The citizens are now scouring the woods and are determined to either capture or drive off the monster. Man, I tell you what, John, that had to be pretty scary. I mean, because that's a monster in the woods. That's a real wild man.
I love the writing style from the 1800s.
Yeah, right. Me too. I was like, consternation. What? I'm having to read that from my computer screen.
Delight in horrid
Okay, so and
screams
here yes, absolutely. And we also had like the Kentucky Wildman as well. You know, I've had Charlie Raymond on my show at Spaced Out Radio. He's with the KBRO, the Kentucky Bigfoot Research Organization. He's written a book on the Kentucky Wildman. Okay, and this is I don't know if this is a picture of the Wildman, because that actually kind of looks like someone from a different country in that picture there, that drawing. But it looked more, the Kentucky Wildman was more like a Sasquatch. Okay. And if people have been following me for a while, you know that I've done a show on Paul Bunyan. Okay. Do y'all remember Paul Bunyan? I did a remote viewing show where my buddy Glenn Jackson, who's one of my teammates, he tasked me with a remote viewing target of the real life Paul Bunyan. Okay, now that's a character that was based off a real person, and so if you look into the historical records, I believe it's in, I want to say Minnesota or Wisconsin. Paul Bunyan looks like a Sasquatch. Okay, the artist rendition of what he looked like a wild man, I guess you could say. And they say that he was, 9 feet tall or something, and he could lift up trees over, like full trees over his shoulder and stuff. I mean, I can't hardly even pick up a log. Okay. Sometimes logs are heavy, John. And, but he was able to flip those over his shoulder like a gigantic tree. I believe that he was a wild man, but anyways, I think that's what a lot of these wild man reports are type 4 Sasquatches.
Didn't Daniel Boone have a run-in with a wild man?
I believe so. Yeah, I think I did hear about that, Sasquatch or wild man. Yeah, interesting. Well, and we also have the Ocheesee Pond Wildman. This was an article out of the New York Times, y'all. I can't really read this, but it was down in Tallahassee in Chattahoochee, Florida, y'all. Okay. They caught this wild man. Now he was hanging out in this pond right here. This is the Ocheesee Pond. It's a swamp down in Florida. John, I have actually been called down to a family's residence on their property to do a Bigfoot investigation. This was some years ago. My son was still in a car seat. So he's 9. So it had to have been like 7 years ago at the least. But yeah, I was down there at what was their name? It was a couple, they were on the Animal Planet and stuff. That I was asked to keep their name private, but they're all over the news and stuff. I think Stacy Brown has, down in Florida, he's famous skunk ape footage. He's done research down on their property as well. But we were down there a long time ago and, doing some research. That's in Chattahoochee, Florida. And, this is where they found that wild man. And I believe they captured the wild man and they took him to the governor. Okay. And I believe the capital's in Tallahassee, I believe. And they took him over there. The governor didn't want anything to do with it. And he sent the wild man to the hospital in Chattahoochee. It's like I don't know if it was a mental asylum or um, it was some sort of. Oh yeah, Don's in the chat. I see Don Tart. What's up? Don was with me down in Florida, and so thank you for being here, Don. But yeah, that was a great trip. So, but they sent him to this hospital, and listen, y'all, Bigfoot Anon, Connor Flynn, I love him to death. He's talked about the Ocheesee Pond Wild Man, and he's down from that area of Florida, and he says that wild man, which we believe was like a Sasquatch, type 4 Sasquatch, is buried on the property of that hospital in Chattahoochee, Florida to this day. Okay. But yeah, super, super, super interesting. I mean, these wild men were all over the place. Like what happened to the wild men, John? Do you think that they're still around or do you think that they're all gone now?
Well, I think
we're talking about feral people being here.
Well, once they go feral, they become part of nature. And, it's like, you start seeing less and less of them the closer you are to a city. It's funny. My whole life, it was a big deal to see a deer, and now here I got to make sure I don't run over one when I'm out driving or, I can practically trip over. I had one nearly jump over me one day on my own property. They're just everywhere. So yeah, they're going to move. They're going to move deeper in and avoid humans. And, humans can be pretty good at avoiding humans until they want a human and they're going to go hunt one,
Oh yeah.
So
I had a deer run out in front of my truck yesterday.
My only thing about them being cannibalistic is if they're savvy enough to live off the land in the first place, why would they eat humans when they can go after deer or wild hogs or, just about anything? But who knows? Yeah. Maybe it's a craziness they picked up, or I don't know.
Maybe they taste better. I don't know. I'm just saying from their standpoint, I have no idea. It's part of their diet. I don't know. I mean, I think that when something like that gets hungry, they're going to eat whatever they can grab. And so,
yeah, it may be an opportunistic thing. Yeah.
Well, and I've heard that they go after children and they go after elderly. Okay. Women, children, and the elderly are some of their favorite things to take.
Because they're the slowest.
Because they're the slowest. Well, yeah. Well, the kids are, easy targets, and so are the elderly. I think it's the easy targets. Yeah.
Well, it's the same way lions select their prey. They're gonna get that one that's cut off and not as spry as the others.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. Wow. Yeah. Renee says there's a canyon in Nevada out of Elko where red-haired giants still live, and they're cannibalistic. Okay. So I would say stay away from that area. Okay. Stay away from that area because you don't want to be something's breakfast or something. Okay. So that's pretty scary. Let's see. I have some more pictures here, y'all. In regards to because we're talking about wild men right now, but I know we were talking about the feral humans and the feral children. And here, I'll just show some pictures from throughout time. I mean, there's wild men have been documented throughout history. Okay. Being covered in hair. That guy's got some modesty right there. He's covered with some leaves over his private parts. He's got some sort of civility about him. Okay, that guy right there, or at least the artist had some civility to him.
Well, if it's poison ivy, he'll lose his civility.
He's gonna be itchy, that's for sure. Yep. Yeah. So, but I mean, look that. Okay, so this reminds me of like a Bigfoot. Okay, because see how he has a tree with the roots at the bottom. That's what Bigfoots do, and a lot of these X structures that we discover out in the woods that we happen upon. A lot of times they're turned upside down, and the roots are sitting up in the air. Okay, that's how these Bigfoots roll. Okay, not to say this guy's a Bigfoot, but he could be giant or a Bigfoot.
Do you notice
So
this guy has like a crown on his head? Didn't the last one too? The last picture?
yeah, I think it's the same person. Yeah,
Oh, is it? Okay.
it's the same guy. Yeah, it is. Um, but yeah, and okay, I got another interesting note. Okay, another interesting note here. See, all these things just kind of pop in my head as we're going. So I also was tasked a remote viewing target of the 1980, not 19, y'all, 1892 attack of the Okefenokee swamp giant. Okay, I'm trying to get this right in my head. The attack of the Okefenokee giant in 1892. I believe down in South Georgia. Okay, I live in Georgia, y'all. So this case really it was really interesting for me. I had remote viewed. There was five, I believe it was 5 men that got unalived by a giant in the swamp, and the story goes that there were, I guess, the government had done a land lottery. Okay, back in the early 1800s, and people were just giving out land for settlers down there, all over the place, especially in the swamps down the Okefenokee, where people were, I guess, normally, I guess they just needed people to live down there. I guess I don't know how that worked back then, but some people got some land, and it went right up to this big swamp. Okay, if y'all know swamps, y'all know there's full of alligators and snakes. It's full of wildlife. Okay, very dangerous. And so 2 men decided to venture off, or a man and his son decided to venture off into the swamp and go see what all they could see and find what they could find and see how far back the land went, just exploring. And they were planning to stay for a while, but they got like way out there in the middle of the swamp and they came across a gigantic footprint. It was like, I want to say like 24 inches or something, like a gigantic footprint. And they got scared and said, okay, it was a human footprint. And they got scared. They went back to where they were living, and they were like, "Oh my God, we found this footprint. It could not be human. This is just a giant. We don't know what this is." And so a bunch of rowdy Floridians, some rowdy hunters down from Florida, decided to come up and go hunt whatever this is out in the woods. They wanted to go into the swamp. They were planning on taking it out because it had to be a threat if it was something that big. And so they got out there, and long story short, all of the men, except for maybe one or two, I guess it was like one, a bunch of men went out there. They were all unalived by this giant. Okay, now some people say it was a Bigfoot, okay, a clan of Bigfoots living out in the middle of the swamp. Others say it was like a clan of giants, a bunch of giants. Okay, well, they said Bigfoots. My data said giants, like giant humans. So it wasn't a Bigfoot, it was giant humans. Well, my friend Barb, who lives down there at the Okefenokee, she watched that show and she contacted me and told me, she said, hey, there actually are tales of giant humans living in the Okefenokee that date back forever. Okay. And so my data, I sounded kind of crazy saying, no, I don't think it was Bigfoots, it was giants. And she backed that up. Okay. So, yeah, we've had giants. So who's to say they weren't wild men? Just giant wild men. I don't know, because some of these newspaper articles do say there were like 7 to 9 feet tall wild men. Okay, but yeah, like I said, there's just they're all kind of melded together, and there's a fine line between a lot of them. So, Bigfoot, wild men, giants, or feral humans. Man, it's a lot, John.
It is.
It's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah. And I'm no expert, y'all. I'm no expert. Y'all know I don't know nothing about nothing, but I'm over here exploring it. And we're trying to figure some of this out. And with all these amazing comments in here today, thank you guys so much. I know the more I look over at the comments, the more my computer slows down. So I have to be really careful, but I'm trying to check out all your comments. The information that you guys have is really, I mean, it's imperative when I'm doing these shows and I see some of the input that you guys have. It really does help us with putting the information out there and getting it. So thank you to everybody who's in here today, helping us out with this. We 100% appreciate it. Okay. And, okay, John, is there anything you can think of right now? Cause I've got more pictures and more stuff to talk about. Do you have any thoughts on what I just said?
Go right ahead. I don't have any pictures and just
Okay.
little local stuff. So go right ahead.
Okay. Let's see what all we got. Okay. Let's talk about some of the kids, okay, that are feral. Okay. 'Cause I could actually go over an hour today because my son's home. I had to go get him from school today because he was sick. So we can go a little bit over an hour today, y'all. Okay. Um, so there have been children that have been portrayed in movies over the years that are feral. Okay. And I believe, was it Lord of the Flies? Do you remember that movie, John? Lord of the
Yes,
Flies
I
about the
do.
little boys? I think now I'm not positive, but I think this picture is from Lord of the Flies. It could be Mad Max. I don't know.
I think that's Mad Max. I saw
That
the
could be
old
Mad
Lord of the
Max.
Flies. Plus, I had to read the
Okay.
book in school.
That's Mad Max. This kid's Mad Max. I know who that is. Um, look at that hair, man. Woo, that's some hair. I tell you what, it's almost like a nice mullet. I love me a good mullet. I live down here in the South. So it goes good with just living in the South. I love a good mullet. I just had a conversation about those other day with my girlfriends. But anyways, feral humans, feral children especially have been featured in movies and things over the years. So John, sorry, I was
Sorry
talking about
about that.
mullets
The
while you were
pollen
gone.
kicked in.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, children being left out in the woods. Okay. We hear about kids getting wandering off and getting lost, being protected by bears. I have a gigantic long list here. I mean, if you look up even on Wikipedia, now I know that's not a source for all the greatest information, but on Wikipedia, if you guys go there, there are so many accounts of children historically being taken care of and raised by animals. Okay. Now, I don't know how I feel about having something like this taking care of a child. We've got a dangerous wolf right here. Okay. I like my face is in its booty right there. So let me take that off the screen. That's weird. Sorry. But okay. So Romulus and Remus. Are you familiar with who that is, John?
Yes.
Okay. Romulus and Remus. When I was a kid, I lived near Rome, Georgia. My family lives in Rome. I had some family up there, and on the courthouse steps there is a statue of Romulus and Remus. All right, now these are this mythological story. Okay, I don't know. Maybe it was real. These days, everything that's mythological is actually seems to be real. Okay, there's some kind of truth to it. But these are two little boys. I believe that one of them became the founder of Rome. They say, but that's the mythological story of it. Okay. But they were sentenced to death. Like they were supposed to die. The parents left them on a riverbank, and they were taken in by a she wolf. Okay. And suckled, I guess you call it. They drank off the teat of the she wolf. All right. And she saved them and kept them warm and fed them and until they could be found and brought back to society and they conquered the world. Okay, if you know Roman history. So, I mean, this dates way back. Oh, here's a picture. This is sad, man. The family leaving the children on the riverbank to die. So, but no worry, have no worries. The she wolf came and protected them. Okay, we also have movies like is it the Jungle Book? I think in Mowgli, I believe. He was out there by himself, like a feral kid, basically, living with all of the animals, with the panthers, the tigers, the bears, the monkeys, and orangutans, or whatever. So that is not uncommon. Okay. Also, I have a picture. Here's one right here. This guy was out of India. Okay, this is a little boy. This is Dina Sanachar. Dina Sanachar discovered among wolves in a cave near Agra in India in 1872. At the age of 6, he went on to live amongst humans for over 20 years. But he was found at age 6. Wait, was he found at age 6, or was he found? He left at age 6. Anyways, well, when he went on to live amongst humans for 20 years, including picking up smoking. Okay, why would they even include that? I don't know. But he never learned to speak, and he remained seriously impaired his entire life. Okay, now notice his eyes. Okay, that's something that I keep hearing over and over again with the feral humans, is that their eyes look wild, Okay, their eyes look wild and they're set apart, and they have cataracts or something. Okay, that's something that is very prominent. It's like something that I hear when it comes to the feral humans. Okay, um, let's see. There are countless other kids that were raised by dogs. Okay, a lot of these are little boys. A lot of them are little boys. Okay, and when they're found, they are they've basically, okay. Wait, here we go. Uh, in Romania, there's the Romanian dog boy. I don't have a picture of this kid, but I do have some pictures of feral children with animals. So I'll put those up while I talk about it. The Romanian dog boy, or Mowgli, from the ages of 4 to 7, lived without a family. He was found at the age of 7 and was described as 3-year-old due to the undernutrition. His mother had left her home because of domestic violence, and he ran from home sometime after the mother left. He lived in the wild and took shelter in a cardboard box. Oof. Yeah, I don't want to read. This is really sad, y'all. It's just a whole bunch of child neglect, basically. And these kids go out in the woods, or they take up with animals, and they become one of the animals, okay? Because that's all they know. It's just human behavior, right? John, I mean, it's it's really kind of sad. I mean, I remember seeing a documentary with this young lady, and her name was Oksana, I believe, and I'm trying to find her story here. Let's see if I can find her. There's so many of these stories, y'all. So many of these stories. Oksana was 8 years old, a Ukrainian girl who lived with Black Russian terriers for 6 years. She was found in a kennel with dogs in 1991. She'd been neglected by her parents, who were alcoholics. The 3-year-old, looking for comfort, crawled into the farm and snuggled with the dogs. Her behavior imitated dogs more than humans. She walked on all fours, bared her teeth, and barked. She was removed from her parents by Child Protective Services. So she never even knew how to speak other than to say yes or no. Upon adulthood, she had to be taught to subdue her dog-like behavior. And then she ended up speaking fluently and intelligently at some point. But that's kind of a different story, because she was not fending off in the woods. She was actually in a home. I mean, it's just really sad, because it's really just like basically child neglect right there,
Right.
which is different than the feral humans that are out in the woods eating other humans, kind of. But it's just that there's just such a wide range of this happening, and I'm not saying this happens like a ton. I don't think there's like a ton of these cases, but they are out there, and they have happened.
About 15 years ago, I was working for a phone company, and out in rural northeast Texas, and we were along the North Sulphur River. We were putting in fiber optics, and some days I worked alone. I was going out doing pads and tying things in and stuff like that. And they kept telling me, hey, watch this one road, because if you go down, you go across this old wooden bridge, there's a family down there and they're wild, and they will come out and confront you, and they'll try to steal from you. And I thought they were pulling my leg, and so I thought, oh, okay. But they were serious. I went down there a few times. I never encountered anything, but I do remember I was out there working one day, and I kept hearing somebody walking in the woods, but I never could see them, and I thought about it. And I remember asking about it after we were completely done with that job and moved on somewhere else. I said, "So were you guys pulling my leg about there?" And they're like, "No, man, we don't like working down there. We don't want to go down there." They said they're just really mean, and there's a whole pack of them down there. So I never encountered them, but I thought that was an interesting story.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, there's just so much. When I tell people, please protect yourself when you go out in the woods.
Yeah.
Just do. I don't know. And especially with the TikTok videos, people carrying their phones and their recording devices and their GoPros out into the woods when they're hiking. People come across some weird stuff, y'all. Okay, and I can attest, there's a lot of weird stuff out there. So just be prepared for pretty much anything. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know, John. Yeah, but if our government is absolutely okay, let's just say that like the national parks, like I always say, I believe our national park rangers, a lot of them, um, game wardens, I think a lot of them, I'm not saying all of them, but I think most of them are fully aware there are Bigfoots out in these national and state parks. I've been contacted by park rangers personally to come out and do some scouting of their parks because of all the Bigfoot sightings they've had here in Georgia. Okay. Um, some of them claiming, I mean, one of the guys, he claimed that there was a death related to a Bigfoot out there. And now I didn't find a whole lot of proof of that when I got out there, but not to say it didn't happen. Um, the story went actually, and I'm not going to give all the details, but the story went that an elderly man there had been seeing, he saw a Bigfoot or a wild man, something big that was big and hairy, walking on 2 feet, 2 legs, and it was looking in his window one night in his cabin, and he may or may not have had a heart. Some heart failure or something. Now, I did not find evidence of that completely being 100% the case when I got there. But after speaking to the coroner's office and things, like we had people on the team looking into it, like we really dug into this case, y'all. So, but it's not to say that he was making that story up by any means. But you know, it's just a matter of information getting crisscrossed and things like that. You know, so who knows? Who knows? But yeah, we gotta investigate these things thoroughly when we're out there doing real research, the real boots on the ground research that my team and I do or does. Don Tart's in here. He knows what's up. He's out there taking all sorts of investigation accounts and things like that. He takes accounts and has done many reports over the years. So yeah. Okay. Well, wow, this has been amazing, John. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about today? Because I think I kind of covered most of the feral human information that I have today, and this has been really cool. What a cool show today.
No, I've enjoyed it. It's like I say, it's not one of my never been one of my areas of interest, but now my interest is getting piqued. Might be a book in there somewhere down the road. So I've enjoyed being on. Like I say, I just remember running over those stories when I first started doing Bigfoot research for Relics, and it really, really intrigued me. And I always wanted to include the missing persons, the snatched, just gone kind of story in the stories I was writing. And yeah, I mean, I bought after that Dennis Martin story, I ended up buying all of David Paulides' books. And then I figured out he had been a Bigfoot researcher before he got into the missing 411 thing. So that was even better. But yeah, I think, and as that goes, I think as we go on as a society, you're probably going to see more and more people dropping out, and it may become even less rare than it is. It may become a much bigger issue than it is already. People that are just checking out and going feral, and they may not go feral at first. It may be, but if they stay out there and have children, it's gonna, each little generation is gonna get a little wilder and a little, less able to operate with humanity or with civilization.
It gives a new meaning to wild and free. Okay.
Yeah.
I have a t-shirt that says "Born Wild." I'm like, whoa, I wasn't really born wild compared to these people. Okay, so
yeah, I love my freedom till it comes to the point where I got to gnaw on a human bone, and no, I don't want that much freedom.
Oh God, wild and free, baby. I know. I mean, I sell biker jewelry and stuff, and like biker rings, and I have a couple of pieces that are like say "wild and free." It's got like an eagle on it, and now it's got a whole new meaning in my book. Okay. But yeah, I'm a free spirit, but I ain't that wild. Okay. I'm wild. It's just different types of wild at this point. So yeah. Wow. What an interesting topic today. And yeah, a lot of the research that I did on the feral humans, they did come out of the Smoky Mountains and the Appalachians. And that's why I wanted to really focus on the Appalachians, because those are that's the oldest mountain range in the world. Were you familiar? Did you know that, John? It's the oldest mountain range in the entire
No,
world.
I didn't realize that. Well, you know what's funny? The Kiamichi Mountains I live in here in Oklahoma, they're really old too. That's why they're not as big as say they've worn down over the centuries. But I will say the Appalachians, they've been really hit hard financially with people losing their jobs, losing their homes. So it may be on the rise. I mean, it's always been reported there, but can you imagine now there's probably even more people have been forced out to live off the land and things like that, and it's just going to get worse.
Yeah, it is. That's just an unfortunate state of the world that we're in right now. It is.
Right.
It is. Yeah. Okay. Well, John. Okay. Well, I'm expecting to see some feral humans in the next Relics book. I'm just saying. I'm just kidding.
It's on the list now.
It's on the list. Okay. Well, now it's on your radar. So, and if they're hanging out in the trees, up there with the dogmen and the Bigfoots, I mean, that's just something else that my team needs to put on the radar too.
They're poison ivy modesty belts. Yeah, that too.
Oh my God. I know. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, John, tell my audience where they can find your books. Tell us about your Shadow Chasers books and your Relic series.
Okay, I have 2 series out. The Relic series starts as basically it's a Bigfoot story in the first book, and then it branches off. Get a little UFO action and some other stuff going on by Relics 3. Shadow Chasers is kind of a young adult series, but my adult readers really love this series too. But it was kind of geared toward teenage kids, and it's basically the first book's a Bigfoot story, second one's UFO story, and the third one's kind of a skinwalker story. And I hope Ben enjoyed his book, or if he's got a chance to read it yet.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just about to release the first book in a new series called Enigma Team. And as I was writing it, I just found that I needed some of the characters from Relics. So it's kind of going to be tied into Relics quite a bit. But the first Enigma Team book's going to start nine years after the last Relics book ends off. So, in fact, I may even have to write a Relics 4 to tie the two together, just, officially. So, but it'll be due out at the end of this month, or 1st of November. And it'll be the Enigma Team, and the subtitle will be the channeling. And my books can all be found at www.relicsbook.com, or you can go straight to Amazon. But if you go to relicsbook.com, there's links there for hardcover, softcover, Kindle, whatever you want. Also, there's a email link if you have anything you want to, let me know about your likes or dislikes on the book, and or if you have any questions. And like I say, I got a new series starting, so if you haven't read the Relic series, that'd be a good time to start and get caught up before the next one kicks off.
Okay, John, your Relics books are my favorite Bigfoot book, favorite paranormal book at all. I mean, I don't really read a whole lot of books these days because I just am so busy, but I read your books. I love your books. Your Ishkatini book, man, so good. All of the youth books, I read all of them. And so thank you for putting those out. And thank you so much for being my guest today, my co-host.
Yes.
Man,
always a pleasure.
I love it when you come over here and hang out with me. And yeah, you always bring some fresh knowledge over here. And I can appreciate that. Great insight. You. Awesome. Okay. Well, y'all, thank y'all so much for being here. I want to thank everybody for all your super chats and super stickers today. It really is awesome. You guys are wonderful. I love your support, you guys. I love you guys. And yeah, please join me tomorrow night. I have a remote viewing show, 8 p.m. Eastern. I will be announcing that topic tonight. I don't know. I've been given some blind targets. I don't know what they are yet. Okay, so like I say, I'm always a last minute kind of chick when it comes to doing these shows. But yeah, and you guys come see me this weekend on Spaced Out Radio. I have the Horror Chronicles podcast coming on. We're going to be talking about some scary, spooky stuff on Saturday night. So we're going to be in the spirit of Halloween this weekend over at Space Out Radio. All right, y'all. John, thanks again so much for being here. Please come back and see me. It's always a pleasure. All right, y'all watch the trees when you're out in the woods now, and stay safe out there. Don't go wandering off the path, okay? And don't go pick berries. All right, y'all have a great day. We'll see y'all later. Bye, y'all.